I'm going to start today's session now. I'm sorry that you couldn't make it to today's session. Just to let you know that it's going to be recorded for quality assurance reasons, and also so you can go back and catch up on Moodle. So today we're going to be doing Learning Outcome 2. The aim of today is to understand how business risk is assessed and managed. The Learning Outcome 2.1 states analyse the risk assessment process. So first of all, to analyse, you need to be drawing connections between ideas, comparing and contrasting ideas to show that you are at that analysing stage to meet the learning outcome. So first of all, within this learning outcome, you need to identify a risk, a description of the risk, how the risk is recorded, and evaluate the risk assessment. So to give it a structure, if you go to slide 4, which is actual internal risk, you identify an internal risk within your business. So an example would be, you may find that a risk is leadership and management. So you'd explain that in there, exactly what is happening, what it looks like. It may be a risk of a service user with a safeguarding issue. It might be a risk of a looked after child, self-harming. It's up to you to identify which the risk is and then put it in a risk category of high, medium or low risk. So that'll be the internal risk. And then you've got the external risk within the microsystem. So is it at risk of law and legislation? Is it the fact that the risk is happening because of funding cuts, government controls? Like I said, you find out exactly what the risk is. Is it a macro risk? Is the risk coming from money factors, the economical factor? For example, is the risk coming from cuts again? Is it staffing issues? Is it support? Is it within services? So it's up to you to find out exactly where the risk lies. Because of it could be an economical factor, is it the fact that paying for the right level of care? You have a duty of care as a practitioner, you have a duty of care within business, so you just need to identify the risk found. The risk is assessed firstly by identifying the risk, so the causation. So the risk assessment. The risk assessment will be managed by obviously identifying the risks. So for this, like I said, if you use slides 4 to 7, this will give you an insight how to address this learning outcome. So moving on to 2.2, which states evaluate approaches to managing risk. So if you move on now to slide 22 to 23, which I'm just moving down there. You have it speaks about qualitative and quantitative methods. Well, an easy way of getting this into your head, qualitative and qualitative as an L in it. So that's all about literacy. When I think of it, I think of literacy in talking, finding out elements of what's going on in terms of collecting data. You could actually collect data to your service users. You could do a risk assessment for your service users, your staff. Like I said, if it's a leadership and management matter, then that would address that. If it's quantitative, well, quantitative is more about science and numbers, because that has an N in it. I use that as numbers, as like a science approach using statistics. So it's up to you what sort of approach you want to use to give it a framework to evaluate the managing risk. So there 2 examples, a qualitative or a quantitative method. Also, you could identify if the risk has been there before or is it a new risk. Because if it's an old risk, why hasn't that been minimised? What happened in the past That's evaluating systems that have previously been there. So now if we go on to 2.3, it actually states examine the risk management process. So for this one, if we go to slide 28 to 40, it gives processes of how to examine and the process of risk management. For example, the process, you've got the risk assessment, you've got risk reporting, you've got decisions, because decisions need to be made obviously for accountability reasons. You've got the risk treatment, you've got risk reporting, you've got monitoring of the risk, which is important because the risk may change because needs will change if you're linking it to service users. You've got an ongoing formal audit, so you have a paper trail. You've got modification of changes, which is, I think that's slide 38. It's not actually slide 38 on here, sorry about that. Modification of changes. Well, that's important to show that you've actually identified the risk and done something about the risk. That's showing that you followed the process and you've examined how has it potentially had any strengths or weaknesses within the risk assessment. Like I say, everything here is all on, is going to be uploaded onto Moodle. I'm sorry that none of you could attend because I could give you direct examples of how it fits within your work practice. If you want to drop me an email, please feel free, caroline@ukversity.co.uk. Keep this in line with the Harvard referencing system. There is Neil's Toolbox if you are struggling at all with referencing. You just type in Google Neil's Toolbox and it'll fill in the referencing for you. It won't do it in text in the fact that it won't do it in your assignment. However, it'll give you the correct format to put into your reference list and it'll show you how to do it in text. And I'd just like to state that it's when it says evaluate and it uses these different words. An evaluation is like to justify and stand on a decision, critique, argue. So therefore, if you're making a point, you might say something and then put a counter argument in there too. So you might say, on the other hand, however, perhaps. So then you've got analyze, which is drawing connections amongst ideas, relating the ideas, comparing and contrasting the ideas. Don't feel afraid to counter-argue what you're saying as long as you back up it with referencing, because your biased opinion shouldn't come into that. The reader shouldn't really know your opinion. They should know like academic arguments. Yeah, that's it about evaluation. But if you want any information about evaluation or analysing certain things to show you've understood, if you link it to Bloom's taxonomy, which you can type in a Google search, it'll give you examples of how to evaluate and how to analyse. Well, I'm sorry that you couldn't make today's session, and today's session has been fairly short. Obviously, I've had nobody online, but like I said, please feel free to email me at any time. Thank you.